Okay, hi everyone. It's lovely to see you all here today. So I'm just going to give people a couple of minutes to join. Um, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're feeling all nice and Christmassy and festive. Just to remind you all that we have two options to ask questions. So one option is here in the chat, and the other option is a Q&A. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see like a little Q&A box. You can ask questions there as well. And if you ask your question in the Q&A, no one will be able to see your name. Just myself and Kira will be able to see the question, so we could answer it. If you if you ask the question in the chat, everyone will be able to see what the question was. They'll be able to see your name, which is, depends on the question, I guess. And to start off a little bit and to give people some time to join, just let us know where you're joining from. So I'm based in Dublin. Kiri is based in Dublin too, and Nikki is in Brighton. So we have an international crowd today. My colleague Nikki, that you can see as well among panelists, is going to help in the chat. So if you have some questions about Car Connect or um, you know anything related to what we do, so we have Waterford, we have Denmark, we have Dublin as well. Very nice, Dublin. Hello. Fantastic. So I know we have quite a packed session today, so I think I'm just going to start with a little introduction. Galway Seaford, very nice, very nice, very, very, very Irish crowd today. A lot of people from Wicklow, Dublin, Mayo. Lovely, fantastic. So I think without further ado, I'm just going to again, because usually I give people a bit more time to join, but again, we have a lot to cover today. So, our amazing speaker today is Kira Flanagan. So, hi Kira, lovely to have you here. And Kira is actually one of the professionals who's been with us the longest. Um, she's been with us for a couple of years, and Kira has been absolutely amazing. So, Kira Flanagan believes that we all deserve to live, learn, and work in healthy, happy environments. She's a certified conflict coach and an accredited mediator with the Mediators Institute of Ireland. Kira's background is in working with groups to address conflicts in their communities. In her role as a conflict coach, Kira works with people on a one to one basis, and she supports her clients to overcome tension and disagreements with family, friends, or work colleagues. Kira's role is to listen to her clients and support them to deepen their understanding of the conflict they're experiencing. Throughout this process, her clients learn more about why their dispute has occurred, understand the nature of its impact, and determine what Kira's clients can do next. Kira's job is to empower her clients to identify the best solution for them and to support them to act on it. Kira firmly believes that when we view our conflicts through a new lens, we can learn the skills needed to move forward in our lives. So this particular webinar is because of the time of the year, it's going to be focused around Christmas, but I'm sure a lot of tools and advice that Kira is going to give would be applicable to other conflicts in your life and other situations that you might end up in. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to amazing Kira. We're going to start.
Oh, listen, Paulina, thank you. And thank you to Cara Connect for inviting me to host this webinar. I am really passionate about finding ways to resolve conflict. And, in my own experience as a mediator, I find I get a huge bump in inquiries and requests for support after Christmas. It's a really difficult time for many people, and it's probably something we don't talk enough about. So thanks again for the opportunity to do this. And Paulina, thank you for the amazing introduction. Oh my God. I feel like a superstar. So let me just get on with moving. So you've just heard about who I am. I'm not going to spend much time on that. Let's just go into what we're going to cover today. So we're going to look at what's conflict, why we have conflict, and we're going to look at that through the lens of Christmas. Why does it get so difficult at Christmas for us? Then we're going to look at reactions to conflict. What happens to us when we're in conflict? And then we're going to look at 2 or 3 different approaches for dealing with conflict at Christmas. We're going to look at how we prepare for it, how we do what we do on the day to try and help ourselves prepare for any possible escalation of conflict, and then some SOS strategies if conflict does occur on the day. So the first thing I want to say is that obviously I would hope that anybody who attends this webinar finds something useful in it. But if you're in a situation where there's domestic abuse or there's coercive control, I just wanted to say very clearly your safety comes first. And I've just listed 2 Irish organisations that are there for men or women who are in situations where it's beyond conflict and it's turned into an abusive pattern of behaviour. Okay, so let's get into what is conflict. Conflict is actually, there's loads of definitions of it, but broadly speaking, conflict is quite simple. There's opposition between 2 or more parties, and it's about a natural disagreement. Now, natural disagreements tend to be over 2 or 3 very broad areas, which I'm going to go into. But really, when we think about conflict, that's not what we think. Okay, what we think tends to be about dysfunctional conflict. So, someone else behaving badly, tension, a horrible tension we feel, or in the atmosphere around us, a sense of being attacked, always feels personal. And we think we've been harmed. We may have well been harmed in some way. And the last thing is when I'm working with clients for mediation or conflict coaching, the big feelings that tend to come up are dread of addressing the situation, fear about what will happen, or anger about what's happened. So why do we have conflict at Christmas? Okay, there's 3 big reasons why we all have conflict. Broad, overarching reasons. They can be about values, needs, and identity. So generally in our day-to-day lives, when we're having conflict, it's usually under one of these 3 areas, if you like. But what does that mean for us at Christmas? Well, at Christmas, our values tend to be quite specific. So obviously, we always want to be respected, we want to be trusted, we want fairness, all of that. But in that particular Christmas season, and particularly on Christmas Day, things can change. Our values are very much linked to what we believe the season should be, not just how we should be treated. So an example of that is a conflict I heard about from somebody once who witnessed one in their extended family. Everybody all went away together for the holiday. And on Christmas Day, there was a big conflict over the time the presents were brought up, were to be opened by the children. Okay. This was about 2 different value sets. One family wanted the presents to be opened really early, as soon as the young children got up, because they didn't believe the young children should have to wait to open their presents. Another family, one of the parents wanted to go for a run and said that everybody should wait to open presents until they'd been for a run. So the value sets we're talking about there in relation to Christmas are Christmas Day is about the children. We put the children at the center of everything we do. The other value set that was competing with that was self-care. I can't put my children at the center of anything until I do some self-care first. Okay. And these kind of values can come up also about parenting. If you're looking at other people or you're in close proximity to other people where you have clashes over how children should behave, also stuff about fairness comes up. So fairness is a really important value to us. But when we're at Christmas, fairness can come up in different ways, especially if you're talking about a family where the parents are no longer together. So the fairness might be about who spends time or the most time with the children on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? How do you split the time? There's also values like generosity and gratitude if people feel that people aren't being generous for some reason. And one last value I want to say that can come up quite a lot when you're spending time with family at Christmas: autonomy. If you value independence and your autonomy, that can be particularly challenging at Christmas. So the next thing I want to look at is needs. We have conflict with people when our needs aren't being met. And I have a picture there of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our needs at Christmas might be, once again, about autonomy or about fairness, or they can be about a need for help, a need to carry the load, a need to be heard about what happens. So if these needs aren't being met, tension will occur, and that can spill over into conflict. And the last thing I want to talk about in terms of the big 3 areas where we always tend to see conflict arise, is identity. So identity is huge, especially if you're going back to spend time with family for a few days. You know, our identities get ascribed to us by our family when we're very young. If you haven't been living at home for 10, 20, 30 years, in your mind, in your experience, your identity has evolved. That might not be the case when you go back home. And that identity that people see you as or ascribe to you may not be an identity you're comfortable with or want to be discussed anymore. So that is also going to cause tension for you. And then there's all these other pressures. So the culture of our family system, we're going back into our family system a lot of the time. And when I talk about culture, it's about the stories our families tell about our family, about each other. They're about the behavior that's considered normal in the family and about the values, not the values that our families say that they have, the values that you see in action. Okay, if there's a clash or a different perspective on any of these, that can cause conflict for us. And then there's the conflict stories that our family have brought us up with our whole lives. Our conflict management model or our conflict story in our family might be don't rock the boat. If there's a conflict, say nothing, it will pass. Or this is a family now where we shout and we yell and then it's sorted and it's done. That might have been fine in your family when you were younger, but if you've grown up, you've left home and now you're coming back and returning, that might not be a conflict model that you feel comfortable with anymore. And the next one is fascinating to me. Sometimes we're going back and we're meeting people in the family and spending a significant period of time with them, and there's been hurt. Now, it doesn't matter whether you were really hurt or whether that hurt was imagined and it didn't really happen to the extent you did. It did. If you feel you've been hurt, it hurts, whether it's happened or not. And that is something that you will be bringing back into the family system with you when you see somebody who has hurt you or somebody who you believe has hurt you. The same issue around conflict relates to trauma. Okay, if you're walking back into an environment where there's been trauma, then you are going to become dysregulated. You're going to feel tension in your body. You're going to have very difficult reactions trying to manage that tension. Um, and it can be triggered by like smell, sound, the sight of a person, anything that could activate your senses in any way. And then there's also the relationships we have in our family. What are the power dynamics? Who holds emotional power in the family? Who feels powerless in the family? This can be about money, this can be about psychological power, this can be about the people who are more influential. And that's fine if you're meeting people for a cup of tea for an hour. It can be hard if you're spending a whole day or maybe 3 days with them. And then there's all these unrealistic pressures about Christmas. This idea of having a perfect time and having the perfect family and being happy and being generous and being grateful, that puts a huge pressure on people before they even go back home. So, how does conflict affect us? I'm sure people have heard of the 3 Fs. They've heard of fight, flight, or freeze. But these are automatic reactions that we have that we don't even think about. And it's really important to be aware of that. So, what happens is when we get into a conflict or a stressful situation, we have a very, very fast response based on our genetics, based on our lived experience of conflict or our experience of those people or the environment around us. So, fight happens, we fight back, we shout, we scream, we argue, somebody might hit. Flight is we run away. We do anything we can to avoid the situation. Freeze, well, freeze is have you ever had a conversation where afterwards you felt like you were a rabbit in the headlights? And you look back and you go, oh my God, I should have said A or I should have said B or why didn't I do this? Chances are you froze. And then the last one, which we don't hear as much about, is fawning. So people think when somebody fawns in a situation, when they're trying to appease the other person, or they're complimenting them excessively, or they're trying to help or manage the situation by being very, very quote unquote nice, that that's false or not genuine. I would really argue with that. I would say that's a learned behavior that's become an automatic response because that person was once in a situation where fight, flight, or freeze did not work for them. All of these are modes we go into when we're in survival mode, when we see conflict starting in front of us. So, why do we go into these modes? This is all about the amygdala. So the amygdala, we have two. They're about the size of a peanut and they're an almond shape in our brain, apparently quite close to our eyes. And the amygdala developed to protect us. The amygdala developed when we were cavemen and it got our parts of our body moving and responding automatically so we could fight that saber-toothed tiger, so we could run away from avalanches, so we could freeze in a situation where we needed to. Okay. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, we're no longer cavemen, but the amygdala is still working and always scanning for threat on our behalf to protect us. And if we've been hurt or we've been in any kind of position where we haven't felt emotional safety or psychological safety, our amygdala will remember that situation. And when we go into that situation again or see somebody who maybe fired off a threat response in us, the amygdala will start working, which means our breathing will change. The blood will flow to our major organs in case we need to run. Even the perspective of our eyesight changes. We tend to get tunnel vision. Okay, so our body is responding to this and getting ready to go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode before we even realize we're doing it. So, what we want to do this Christmas is try and slow down that automatic reaction by building up our window of tolerance. Our window of tolerance is basically that space we have where we're more able to be calmer, to regulate our emotions, to think before we speak, and to slow down breathing wise before we go into hyper arousal, which is fight or flight, or go into hypo arousal, which is freeze or fawning. So I'm going to talk about some strategies for a peaceful Christmas now. The first thing I'd like you to do is to make your Christmas conflict plan. And I'm going to talk about the reflections you want to put on that. I'm also doing a shorts toolkit for that, which Cara can share with you or I can share with you afterwards. But what this is going to be based on is maybe the last or most important conflict you had with that person or people. It might have happened at Christmas or it might have happened at another time. And then at the end of that plan, when you've looked at it from a few different perspectives, then consider new responses that you can just try. They might not work, but think of them as experiments that you can try to see what works for the next time. So, reflection exercise is based on the restorative questions, which were developed by a man called Terry O'Connell, and they're used by people in the field of restorative justice and restorative practice. They are so useful. I could do a whole webinar on them, a full hour. But what I just want you to know about these questions: what happened, what you were thinking at the time, what are you thinking now, who is affected and in what way, how could things have been done differently, what needs to happen next. They're about moving us from a blame mindset to an understanding mindset. They're trying to move us from the past and what happened to the present in terms of thinking about it now, and then moving us on to the future in terms of what we might be able to do differently. So apologies to any restorative practitioners who are on this webinar. I did tweak question 3 a little, but I want you to look at question 5. How could things have been done differently? Don't write about what the other person should have done, okay? You've no control over that. This is a reflection exercise for you. Is there anything looking back now you might have done differently? It could have even been turning up at a different time, okay? Or leaving the room at a different time, or maybe something you wish you'd said or tried saying. Question 6, what needs to happen next? You do that at the very end of your plan. So, what we want to do here again is, as part of this plan, think about the values that were important to you that Christmas or during that conflict. Think about the needs that weren't met by that person. And then think about, did anything come up around your identity? Was something said about you that was really triggering for you? And then what we want to do is look into your reaction, okay? Was it fight? Was it flight? Was it freeze? Was it fawn? What happened to your thoughts during that conflict? Did you find them speeding up? Were you even able to think clearly? Did you find yourself going numb? What happened to your breathing? Did it get shallower? And where do you feel the stress in your body when you think about that conflict? I always feel stress right here when I'm thinking about a conflict. And then what else happened to your body? Do you remember maybe how your body felt? Were your shoulders hunched up? Were you squinting? Do you remember anything about your face? Sometimes we clench our jaw when we're stressed or in conflict. And then here's one other exercise I want you to think about. It's based on the Thomas Kilmann conflict management model. Generally, there's 5 ways people respond to conflict. So the first one is all about competing and it's all about winning. You can think of it like this: I mightn't have started the fight, but I will win this one. Okay? I will be the one to get the last word and I will get my way. The other kind of opposite version of that is accommodating. So when we're accommodating, we're saying to someone in a conflict, whatever you want, can we just end this now? Okay, so you lose a lot there. And then when we're avoiding, we're just running away, we're changing the conversation, we're trying to distract people, but someone's still losing there because basically, when we have conflict, it's also a sign that something needs to change, that there's a disagreement, something's being challenged, we need to work through it and find a change. Not always the right thing to do on Christmas Day, however, but think about it like that. People often see compromising as the best way to finish a conflict. I come to you, you come to me, we both talk about it, I give something up, you give something up. But the problem that can sometimes happen with compromise is both people walk away feeling they gave up too much and they didn't really get what they needed anyway. So, what you're always trying to do in a conflict is to find out what the other person needs, share what you need, not what you want, what you need, and see if you can help each other get what each other need. That takes quite a while. It takes a lot of talking. Okay, so it might not be the space to do that on Christmas Day, but even understanding what you tend to do in these situations or what the other person might do, what their style is, can be very helpful. Okay, so you've got a Christmas plan now in terms of what you've reflected on. And we're going to talk about boundaries in a minute, thinking about your boundaries. We're also going to talk about doing some advanced work to help with those automatic reactions that we have when conflict is coming our way. And then we want to think about what needs to happen next. That 6th question in the restorative questions. So I've put there, what can you stop doing? But it could be as easy as, what can you start doing? Is there something new you might be able to do? And then, who can be of service? Who can help you? Is there someone you can go through your plan with? Is there someone you can practice this with who would be able to give you be a bouncing board, give you a new perspective on how this might work? So I want to talk about boundaries for a minute. Often when we think about boundaries, they're about limits that we put on relationships. Okay, we think of them as walls we need to put up against certain people or fences, or we'll say to people, oh, you don't have boundaries. You don't have healthy boundaries. That's fine. But I'd ask you, when you're thinking about this particular Christmas coming, to think about your boundaries in a separate way. Okay. First of all, understand what you need. Think about needs that weren't met before and what you really, really need this Christmas. For instance, do you need to stay sober? Do you need time on your own? Do you need to have a conversation with someone before Christmas Day so you feel calmer going into it? Think about it from the point of view of needs. and think about your time and energy in a really positive way. Is there something you can do to help yourself around making the time you spend more positive and making sure you're not completely depleted? There's also work with a friend, if possible, or someone who knows you well, that you can try and do around saying no to something that might be really, really unrealistic for you. So people with really healthy boundaries are very comfortable saying no. They don't always give reasons either. So they don't over explain. They may give a short reason and then that's it. I'm not saying that you will get that and develop that skill very, very quickly, but it might be worth trying it out with somebody and seeing what that feels like for you before Christmas. And the other thing I want to say about boundaries is when we establish new ways of looking at our time and our energy and what we need, and if that involves saying no to people, there will be pushback. Okay? You have no control over people's reaction or response to that. You just have to decide what's really important in terms of your needs, your time, and your energy, and be as consistent as possible. Maybe someone will ask for a bit more flexibility, and if you can give it, great, but try and be clear, try and be consistent if you can, and just understand if people are pushing back in that or getting upset, it's because it's new, it's uncomfortable, and they may be a bit confused. So we're now moving into the preparation stage and also stuff you can do on Christmas Day to widen your window of tolerance so that you feel better and you feel more prepared if conflict does start coming your way. Okay? So the first thing I would say is think about movement and think about breath. So what you want to do on Christmas Day is build in movement breaks. So I'm thinking of that parent who said that the children had to wait until they had a run that morning. There may have been a really serious reason for that person. Okay? Are there times in the day when you can get away on your own, even for 20 minutes, and just walk really fastly, do something to just help your amygdala just release any tension that you might be feeling? Okay. Can you build in any movement breaks even when you're with family? For instance, we always had an aunt and uncle who visited us and had Christmas with us, but they would always go for a walk on their own after dinner. And that was just what they did. They didn't invite anybody. They just said, we're going for a walk. We'll see you in an hour. And it was really nice. They always came back in great form. So is there anything you can do to support your body so you can have a better physiological reaction if there's conflict on the day? The other thing I would ask you to consider doing as of today in the weeks running up to Christmas is to find a breath or a type of breath work on YouTube that really, really would help you. So I always recommend the 4-7-8 breath or the box breath. If you look them up on YouTube, you'll see instructions on how to do them. But the more you practice those breaths before Christmas Day, the more helpful they'll be when you're around people who you find difficult. Okay. The great thing about breath work is you can run to the bathroom, stay there for 5 minutes, do your breath work, and come back out. But like I said, the more you do before Christmas Day, the more beneficial it'll be. And when we do breath work, what we're doing is we're calming down our parasympathetic nervous system and we're widening our window of tolerance, which gives us a bit of time before we automatically jump into the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. Okay, we're now going to look at SOS strategies. Okay, this is about trying to de-escalate a situation if conflict does happen. Okay, what I'd like to just say about this is when you're in a conflict situation, you cannot control the other person. But what you can do is if you can find a new way to manage or be intentional about some of the things you do, you take the heat out of the conflict. Sometimes you can take it out a lot. Sometimes it might not be as effective as you would hope it would be, but it will definitely turn the dial down, take some of the temperature out. So the first thing we're going to look at is modeling. not mirroring. And what I want to talk about is our mirror neurons. So these were brain cells that really a lot of work, I don't think, happened on these until about the 1990s. And mirror neurons are really important in learning and in child development. So basically, this is how children learn. Babies learn by imitating. Okay, they learn that when a caregiver is looking at them and smiling, they start trying to imitate that, and then they start smiling too. It's how they learn to talk, it's how they learn to pick things up in their hand. Imitation by learning, or learning by imitation. And what happens is in our mirror neurons fire up when we see someone doing an activity and when we're doing an activity ourselves. So we get the same kind of burst in our mirror neurons if somebody's doing the same thing as us, or if we're doing that as much as if we're doing that activity ourselves. An example would be when you're walking down the street, someone just happens to smile at you and you find yourself automatically smiling back. Or you really notice it with teenagers. Okay, with teenagers, you could see a group of them, and there could be a group of girls. One of them starts laughing at a really high pitch or screeching, and it's like a ripple effect. They all do that. So, what's really interesting about mirror neurons is as far as we understand, they're about learning, but there's also something about empathy there. Mirror neurons enable empathy. They enable us to mirror each other's gestures and find connection in that. So when I say model, don't mirror, think about conflict and think about the fact that if someone's gestures are starting to become conflict ready, if you like, if their posture is changing, if their face is looking more stern, if the tone of their voice is changing, what you want to do is try not to mirror that. What you want to do is model the body language or the behavior that you would like that other person to mirror. Okay. So I would always say be aware of your body language in this situation. And when we're talking about our body language, we're talking about our posture, our hands, our face, and our eye contact. So when you would have done your conflict plan, you would have looked at what happened to your body at that point in terms of your breathing, your body language, what you remember of it. And then think about, okay, how can I calm that down? Are my shoulders hunched up? Can I lower them? Am I leaning forward like this? Can I stand back a bit? It's not about faking body language. It's about trying to slow down and be intentional about how you're standing. So you're showing that other person that you're not a threat. The other thing that's really important about body language is your tone of voice. Okay? We mirror each other's tone of voice as well as conflict starts to escalate. So, what you want to do is intentionally soften your voice. Give that person space to mirror you, and give that person space while you try and manage your window of tolerance as well. So, I'm going to talk about what you will be doing to complement that in terms of your communication. So mediators use this acronym WAIT, and it means, why am I talking? If you're in a conflict situation that's starting to escalate, please hold off from talking. Because if you are starting to become dysregulated and you're going into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, chances are you're going to say something you regret. And timing is everything. As people become escalated, they stop hearing whole sentences and they just hear pieces of words, and they're usually the words that they're scanning for. They're the words our amygdala are scanning for to detect threat. So if you can stop talking and really think about if this is the right time to say something that you really have this compulsion to say. So wait, and then try and use the rule of five. So the rule of five is this: if you're in a really difficult situation where things are escalating, can this point I want to make, can this wait 5 seconds? Can this wait 5 minutes? Can it wait 5 hours? Can it wait 5 days? Can it wait 5 weeks? What you might want to say is really important. But if things are escalating, chances are it's going to be misinterpreted. And also, Christmas isn't always the right time to have this conversation it's probably better off having it in January or February. So if you can hold off from saying that thing that's on the tip of your tongue, once again, you're not escalating the conflict further. The other thing is this: when we're dysregulated, what helps dampen down our nervous system and dampen down those automatic responses are feeling connected. If the person opposite you is changing their body language to try and show you that they're doing their best to calm down, if they're not speaking over you or saying things that you are finding threatening, and if they're actively listening, that helps you to calm down too. So, what do we mean by active listening? Active listening is about paying attention. It's about understanding and listening for important phrases that the person might keep repeating. So if that person is saying, I got no help today, nobody helped me, something like that, that's what you want to zone in on and ask them about. Okay, because that's the issue and the need that's coming up for them today. So asking questions, and also, as hard as this is, doing your best to be non-judgmental. If you're actively listening for criticism, that's not going to help you. If you're actively listening so you can make a point, that's just going to keep escalating the conflict. What you want for yourself is to give yourself space so you can manage the conflict better, or at least press pause on the conflict, though there's a more appropriate time to deal with it with that person. So these are the strategies we talked about for managing conflict at Christmas. I would always say prepare, prepare, prepare. So I'm about nearly finished developing just a very short workbook that will just have the restorative questions, a little map around value, needs, identity, Thomas Kilmann conflict model, and then thinking about how conflict affects your body. In preparation, you also want to be thinking about boundaries in terms of your energy, your time, and your needs. And then start practicing breathing exercises. On the day, preemptively, you want to build in movement breaks. And you also want to be practicing those breaths. Don't wait till it gets really tough. Do that beforehand. And then if conflict does start escalating, think about modeling the behavior you would love to see in that person. You mightn't see it, but it will calm you down, and they have a better chance of calming down if you do your best to be intentional about your body language, about waiting before you speak and using the rule before of five, and using active listening to connect. Now, you might notice that I haven't used or talked about certain types of language that can help connect with people or can dampen down conflict. I've chosen not to do that because we don't have a lot of time in this webinar, and you need to kind of practice that or try it. But you can get in touch with me anytime if you want to find out more about that or do some conflict coaching with me. So there's some references you may be interested in reading up on. And also email me anytime if you have a question, and I'll either email back or I'll just have a very short brief call with you, no charge, nothing like that. And I really, really hope you have a peaceful Christmas and that it's more peaceful than it was in previous years. And thanks again to Cara Connect for the chat, for letting me host this webinar. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kira. Kira, would you mind just still share the
Yeah,
email, just so that people could take it down and copy it maybe?
sure.
So Kira's email is going to be here on the screen now, and we're going to, so it's Kira at resetrp.ie. Also, just to remind you all that, first of all, this session is recorded, so if you need to go and you've asked your question, we will answer it in a couple of minutes, and you'll be able to watch the recording back. So we will either send it to you or you'll be able to find it in the Content Hub if you're a Cara Connect client. Also, if you're, yes, we will reshare slides as well. Someone asked in the chat. Also, if you're a Cara Connect client, you are able to book sessions with Kira that will be sponsored by your employer. If Kira is not in your Wellbeing Hub, just let us know and we'll do our best to connect her. So you'll be able to use your sponsor credits to ask Kira some questions related to your situation and maybe spend a bit more time with her discussing what bothers you. So on this note, I'm going to move to questions. We have 3 at the moment. So one is, How should one navigate a situation where a relative gives a gift that fundamentally clashes with the recipient's values? For
Okay.
example, giving meat to a strict vegan, or an expensive loud toy to a minimalist parent, and the giver gets visibly offended when the recipient tries to set a boundary or express a gentle preference.
Okay. Tell me about the vegan piece again.
So, for example, giving meat to a strict vegan.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's really, really difficult. I will talk about the present first. Um, Once again, this is about children and values. Um, I would imagine there is an issue with the relationship there and with power dynamics in the relationship. And there's also an issue with needing to be heard around your boundaries. So I guess you have two choices. What you can do is you could maybe contact people before Christmas and say, my son, my daughter, has said that they would love this type of present this year. If you would like to, contribute to that, great. Or here's a list of things that I know they're really, really interested in. So what you're doing there is you're giving people information about what would be acceptable to you, what would be acceptable for your child, without doing it in a way that embarrasses them. The other thing I want you to think about is Christmas Day and how much time you have to spend with that person. Um, if that person buys a toy that isn't acceptable for you, I would ask you to think, is Christmas Day the right day to address it? Okay. Would it be worth in the day showing gratitude and appreciation for the effort made, but maybe not for the present? So you could say, wow, thank you. You really put a lot of effort and thought into this present. Tell me what you were thinking. What attracted you to that present? So what you're doing there is you're trying to, if you want, get some understanding about why they chose that present. There might be something there that you completely missed about what they were doing, and maybe it wasn't as intentional as you think it might be. You're also able to demonstrate gratitude for the effort as opposed to the gift itself. And after Christmas Day, you don't have to ever use that present again. You can give it to a charity shop straight away. Now, this is obviously a very quick response. We're not getting into the dynamics of the relationship there, but that's my first response. The thing about giving meat to a strict vegan, that must be very challenging for the vegan involved. Um, and I guess in that case, the person's just thinking about their time, energy, and boundaries. Would it be helpful for the vegan to get in touch beforehand and say, I'm going to bring my own food this year, really happy to do it. I don't want you to feel in any way like you have to cook something differently. So these are just suggestions I'm making. Obviously, once again, I don't have the history or the context of what's happened before, past hurts, or how that relationship works. If you want to ask a follow-up question in relation to that in the chat, please do. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kira. So we're going to move on to the next one. If a host has clear early morning plans for Christmas Day, but a visiting relative insists on staying up late, drinking, and is then disruptive or grumpy the next morning, what is the best way to firmly re-establish the host's boundaries without creating a massive scene on Christmas Eve? Um,
I'm thinking that's a good one.
yeah.
Um, I think thinking about what will be best for you when that person does continue that pattern of behavior. So it sounds to me like, and I'm going to assume you've talked to that person before about the drinking or the disruptive behavior the night before and the impact it's had on you the next day. If you haven't, it might be worth talking to them again about it. It might also be worth considering and mapping out whether you have to have them stay or not, or could they stay with someone else? I'm imagining that isn't possible in your case, but if it is possible, is that something worth considering? And then think about protecting your boundaries um, in the house the night before and the following day. So is it a case that you can't control that person's behavior? I'm imagining that person comes with their own alcohol. Um, so you need to find alternate things to do that give you energy and that make you and your family feel okay on Christmas Day and Christmas morning. That sounds like saying to the person in advance, this is what we're doing, this is what we'll be doing in the morning, and you're welcome to join us. If you don't, that's fine. You can do your own thing around breakfast or this or that or whatever. I would also think very carefully about how you can build in movement breaks for yourself and your loved ones first thing in the morning, outdoors, away from that person, to just make sure you don't feel so dysregulated by what's happened the night before or dysregulated by worries about their mood or their behavior in the morning.
Thank you very much, Kira. So, next question is similar, but slightly different. So, if a family member consistently uses alcohol as an excuse to bring up continuous political or social topics and starts deliberately trying to provoke arguments, what is a pre-planned, non-confrontational exit script or a distraction technique that the entire family can agree on beforehand?
So, what I would ask there is I would send an email to other people or contact other people in the family. I'm going to imagine right now from your situation that there are other family members coming to visit you. It's not just this one person, okay? In that scenario there are other people coming to visit, I would talk to them and I would ask them, what are you thinking? What happens for you when this family member comes, starts drinking a lot and starts talking about politics? So first of all, what you want to see is, are there anyone you can collaborate with you who can support you to come up with a response in relation to this? If it's just you, if it's just that relative and your immediate family, I would say before they come, we're not going to be talking about politics this year. Um, we just find the conversation just gets really difficult, and that's not what Christmas is about for us. And talk about your values at Christmas. So your values are, we want to have fun, we want to have a nice time with the kids or whoever's visiting, and our needs are to have a peaceful Christmas. So you can say to that person beforehand and say, just to warn you, we won't be talking about politics. You can also try and make it seem fun if this starts. So if this starts, you can ring a bell, say, hang on, no politics on Christmas Day, and ring a bell. Okay. You can also ask that person beforehand if they will agree to that and say, you really don't want to have a discussion about politics. And can they comply with that as your guest? The other thing you can do in terms of exit strategies, if that's not working, is remove yourself and, if possible, just go to another room and stick the television on. If you've already given them notice that you don't want to partake in debates about politics, you can also let them know what will happen. Say, look, we'll probably just go and watch some telly or start a board game. We really just don't want to get involved in chats like that. So I hope that's okay. It can be a little hard to answer these questions because there's so much involved around relationships and stuff. So do email me, or if you want to ask a follow-up question, that's fine too.
Thank you so much, Kira. Or if you're a Cara Connect client, you can request Kira to be added into your hub and
Sure.
use your
Um,
Stonebwood credits.
Paulina, there's just one thing I'm thinking. I mean, what's really hitting me here is just I think alcohol has come up and values have come up. So we can't control how much other people consume alcohol, but we can say to them beforehand, you know, you're really welcome. We love it when you come. We did find last time that, the morning you were really tired in the morning. So what we're going to do is we're going to go off and do our own thing at this time. We're going to go to mass together. We're going to go for a family walk together, and we'll just leave some stuff for you to sort yourself out in the morning. Or we found like that there was a lot of difficult conversations about politics, and we really want to have a peaceful, fun time this Christmas. So if you don't mind, we'd like you to steer clear of politics, and we won't be partaking in any conversations. We'll just do other activities if it keeps coming up. But preparation is really good for people because then they don't suddenly get stunned or shocked when the typical reaction or response changes. You're giving them an idea and a sense of what will happen. And that actually provides a framework for them then to make decisions about what they do on the day.
Thank you so much, Kira.
Okay.
Um, so it was an excellent answer as well. And there's a really interesting comment in the chat that I'm going to read out later about alcohol during Christmas for sure. So next question is it's actually quite different from the previous ones, and I think it's very interesting. It could be relatable to a lot of people. So, how can we cope with different parenting skills? For example, a sibling uses gentle parenting, and you feel like their kids are allowed to do anything like hidden cousins, grandparents, grabbing toys, and making the rest of the family feel uncomfortable.
This is a really big one at Christmas. Okay. So I think parenting styles are something that's very core to anyone who's a parent. And it's also very, very wrapped up in identity. Okay. So there's two ways of looking at this. If you're going down the route where someone is gentle parenting and their child might be behaving in a way that's upsetting other people, you just talk about the behavior in the moment and just go, oh, okay, Johnny has hit Jack, and you respond to Jack and you let Johnny know, Johnny, sorry, you can't hit Jack. Okay, you don't get into the parenting style, you just address the behavior in the moment. And you do that by focusing on the person who's upset or the child who's been hurt, and just letting the other person know, really, the other child know really, really gently, sorry, Johnny, you can't do that. Okay. So what you're doing there is you're not making that child feel like a bad child. You're not making any kind of judgment on the parenting style that the other parent could be upset by. You're just talking about the behavior. Okay. If there's stuff that adults are getting upset about, I guess, first of all, you can't really be responsible. Well, not you can't. You can feel responsible for the impact a child or a parenting style is having on everyone in the room. But that's not healthy for you because you're becoming dysregulated about everything then. What might be better for you is just to think about your needs in the moment if that's happening. So, what are your needs in the moment if you see a child maybe upsetting a grandparent or upsetting an aunt or an uncle? What do they need in the moment? So, the best thing to do is like, do I need to calm down? Do I need to step away before I get mad? Do I need a quick movement break? And then the next thing to be will be, let me check in with that aunt or uncle. Let me check in with that grandparent. Are they okay? Would they like me to bring them somewhere else? Because really it's up to that person to address the issue around that child's behavior, either with the child or with the parent. What you don't want to do is become the person who feels they have to speak for everybody, because that will lead to a wider conflict that you maybe aren't up for. The other thing I would ask you to think about when you do talk, or if you are challenged on what on what you might have said to that child is think about your needs and your values. So if you were challenged about what you might have said to a child, once you know you've been non-judgmental, you've been gentle in your tone, you've tried to be calm in your body language, all you need to say is, look, I need my kids to feel safe. No, but none of us want to see our kids crying on Christmas Day. And bring it back to what we all want for our kids. We all want our kids to feel safe. We all want our kids to play gently with each other. And we all want to be kind to each other.
Thank you so much, Kira.
Okay.
That's a fantastic answer. Um, there is one more question for me. So I missed the first half of the webinar. Will the recording be shared? Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The recording will be shared, as well as slides by Kira. So don't worry about it. You'll be able to catch up with the beginning of the webinar. And finally, I would like to read a lovely comment in the chat. Um, lovely, maybe a wrong word. A very insightful comment in the chat that is very, I think, applicable to the whole situation and conversation about alcohol during Christmas. So it is clear by the questions that alcohol can be such a negative part of Christmas. Drinking too much at Christmas for some people is simply a case of seasonal overindulgence. You knock them back, maybe cut the rug, and then pay your dues in the morning with a hangover, and then crack on as normal. But for addicted drinkers, it's a very different story, for both them and their families. The chaos and destruction can be seismic. We've been sold a fraction of the story. Alcohol enhances your life, makes you more attractive, increases your charisma. So I think that's a very good comment. That
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess that it's a really important point to remember are the people who ask questions with alcohol is the case here that they're dealing with people who are addicted to alcohol and maybe what supports can they put in place for themselves around maybe going to Al-Anon or seeking out supports on websites because it is a hugely stressful time for people being around family and having to deal with the impact of addiction. It's really hard for the person who's at the center of it. It's hugely hard for them and also so difficult for the people around them.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I hope everyone has a peaceful Christmas, definitely. It can be quite tough,
Yeah,
especially as multiple people said, alcohol involved, because it can be such a massive trigger for so many
yeah.
people. But we're almost out of time. So thank you so much, Kira, and thank you so much everyone who has attended. Um, Christmas Day is the busiest day for a child line. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, On this note, I think it's time to finish. So, thank you so much, everyone who attended. I am going to quote Kieran and I'm going to wish you a peaceful Christmas as well
Oh, thank
for
you.
you and all of your loved ones. And thank you again for a fantastic presentation. So,
Oh, thank
recording will be shared with you and then it will be also put in a content hub. So, if you're part of the Wellbeing Hubs, if you're a client, you'll be able to watch it back anytime and, point your colleagues there as well. So, Merry Christmas, everyone. Have a happy new year, and I'll see you all next year. Bye
Brilliant.
bye.
Thanks again, everybody, and thanks, Cara Connect.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.